Not that there's anybody here yet, but as soon as there is, they will probably notice if it's just me talking at my selfish. So,
The new
I
dynamic.
mean, it wouldn't. I was gonna say it would be par for the course, but still, people might notice.
I mean, like a whole episode that I've heard from yourself that's like that.
No.
It would just be funny if there were like natural
for like
pauses.
55 minutes.
But if there was like natural, like conversational pauses.
That would be funny.
So.
There's not.
But anyway, you know where there's not a conversational pause? This week's episode. As
Excellent.
I pause conversationally. Welcome back to the Black Tower Podcast. We are a Wheel of Time podcast talking anything and everything Wheel of Time from the top to the bottom to the left to the right. And don't ask how that makes sense considering it's a Wheel of Time with no sides, endings, tops, or bottoms. Though there are tops or bottoms in the Wheel of Time, the Wheel of Time has no tops or bottoms.
No, actually, I think the Wheel of Time is full of tops, bottoms, and switches.
That's what I'm saying. They're in the Wheel of Time, but the Wheel of Time doesn't have.
Yeah,
doesn't really work. I kind of dug myself in a hole there.
No, I like it. I actually really like that. We all know that Swan Sanche, top.
Oh,
Perrin, Ibarra,
with the exception of when they're with one person, then they're in that circumstance. I think that they'd be a bottom with one person, at least.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's Moraine who says the line. That's right. I was forgetting the scene for a second.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they do both say the line, just in very different contexts.
Yes, exactly.
One is very much "I'm your boss," and the other one is "I'm your boss."
Yes, exactly.
But anyway,
good times.
I don't remember what spoiler warning I picked for this episode. Let me blind myself looking and see.
It's the Mimor Shoddy one.
Oh, yeah.
But before we get to that, hi everybody. I am your Amin Khan Mihail here at the Black Tower for the podcast and for the training and for the, war councils. My name is Daniel. I'm coming at you from the West Coast.
I mean, there was like rarely a time you weren't.
Correct.
You're just a little closer to the cold.
Indeed.
And the Canadian.
Yes. I've met so many Canadians at my work now. They come down to Cheesecake Factory from British Columbia and Vancouver. It's great. It's fun.
Not surprised. I mean, it's like the same. Well, I mean, you get the same kind of thing when when you're like in like southern Texas and like Arizona, that kind of place.
Yeah.
Really, really good food. Anyway, I'm your Bajan Mahale, Andrew, and our Sorban Mahale is off with the Atha on Mier.
Correct.
Just splishy splashing around.
Splish splash, I was taking a bath. All about a cruise ship.
So where he's going, for the sake of not shattering or cutting any glass, I hope he's wearing a shirt. Because it's gonna be cold.
Indeed. He's going to the Arctic of the ant variety.
Just take him to like the tiniest ice cube they can find floating. It is the Antarctic. Did you not see the hyphen in the name? Like,
indeed.
Oh, it'd be such a letdown.
In fact, it is really cool though. He did tell us last week that this will be the 7th continent for his daughters. So they will have been to all of the continents at the end of this cruise, which is cool. I think that's a very fun thing to do.
I was trying to pick the best name to say about what tonight's topic was in the live chat, not to push us into the topic right now necessarily.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, some of these names, like, and I think I picked the middle spoiler one. I think I went with the mid option.
Yes.
Because one name is like, oh, okay, yeah, I know who that guy is, but it's not necessarily spoiler. The other one is like, I've never heard that name in my life until everything is spoiled.
Yeah, exactly. But that does mean that we are going to get spoilery tonight. But before we go ahead and slap on that protection and make sure that all of you don't get spoiled and sad and have to walk away and all of that good stuff, we want to let you know about a couple of things. And by a couple of things, I mean things that you probably already know about. We're probably not giving you super new information, but it's always nice to remind.
Beard here. I just smelled the truth about. This is my favorite.
Jesus. Yeah, we stay on topic. How'd you know? No, but we definitely want you guys to go check out blacktowerpod.com, right? It's not Black Tower Podcast, right?
No, it's just Black Tower Pod.
Excellent.
We were trying to save everybody some time, and so we cut out the cast.
The 4 letters, yeah, indeed. Yes, so I highly recommend go to blacktowerpod.com. It's a very fun place to get all of the information about us that you need, as well as a number of different things about the community of the Wheel of Time, whether that is comments from other content creators or links to other places where you can find content creators or things like that, as well as the last 5 episodes that we have up, and different things that we have coming up, a calendar for recording as well as events, and also the links to our merch shops, which there are 2, but today we're going to talk about new creations by Jen. She's doing great work over there for the Wheel of Time content creators and the community in general. She was actually at WatCon. If you got a chance to meet Jen by going to WatCon, she's a very nice person, and we very much enjoy the work that she does and the products that she creates, which have been very fun for us. So go check out our Two Rivers Sniper shot glasses, for example. Those are exclusive to New Creations by Jen, as well as the Frosty Mug Society, for another example. But yeah, definitely go check that out, and then go check out all of the other content creator stuff that you're interested in, or start your next reread of Wheel of Time if you have some extra time, all of that good stuff. But now, as mentioned earlier, we are going to get real spoilery for this episode, because we are going to be talking about a person who is definitely a bit of an enigma. And by the time that you find out who they actually are, you are definitely pretty far in the books, and you will want to walk away now to avoid getting too much information if you are not pretty far in the book series. So go ahead and savor your reread, or savor your first read. If you're on a reread, then you're good to go here. If you are on a first read, go away unless you are pretty sure that you're not going to get upset when we spoil a kind of major character that you don't want to know about yet, or pieces of a major character, I should say.
Don't mind me, because as soon as you mentioned the playlist, I was like, I wonder if the playlist is up to date. Spoiler warning. Wasn't.
Well, speaking of spoiler warning, you want to go ahead and
speaking of the spoiler warning, it's this one.
Welcome to the Black Tower, a Wheel of Time podcast. All right, let's check this one. This podcast episode will likely be spoiling all of the books in the series, but if Daniel is in charge of the recording, it'll never hit the editing bay. So just in case you're some masochist Patreon supporter who hasn't read the whole series and just gets off on being part of lost episodes, how about you put that spoiler condom all the way on?
Can I just say it's now actually currently, it's not a lost episode, it just hasn't gone up yet. It definitely will, but the 3 episodes that I was in charge of going ahead and recording for, one of them has made it up. That is not a very good record. So Morshadi, you're still pretty accurate, and it hurts me on the inside.
But you also have a massive advantage to altering that percentage because it's still a low number, right?
Correct.
So
yeah.
now,
So
now's the time to turn that F into an A.
Yes. Well, it'll still not be an A. The best I can actually do right now is a D, which is not very good. But
I mean, over
again,
time,
it's a real bad F to a solid D. It'll go from 33% to 66.
Generally, what I tell little girl from before she comes over, like, it's a pretty solid D, but it's going to be a really bad F.
Oh,
So you know.
F for effort. All right. So now that you
F
guys
is
have
for
all
failure.
indeed. So
Right.
now that you all
Anyway.
have been made safe from the spoilers, and everyone who has not
Always practice safe wheel of timing.
indeed, and everyone who has not gotten to these parts has been successfully sent away. Until such a time that they do read enough into the book so that they aren't spoiled by this episode. Tonight, we are going back to the series that we have going, that is the background breakdowns. Now, as eagle-eyed viewers will be able to tell you, we actually have a couple of these series going on in some ways. They're all definitely background breakdown series, but there are a few different sort of like subcategories within them. We have basically like background breakdown good characters, background breakdown bad characters, and background breakdown Forsaken, which is kind of just bad characters, but they're like almost a subset of themselves, so, or of their own, because they like
how many different series do we have going on? Because we got the background breakdown and its 3 subsets.
Yeah.
When we feel like it, we have the cultural breakdowns.
Correct.
We have what I think is mine
breakdowns.
and yeah, we do have those.
Yeah.
Did we finish that? I think we finished the Aja breakdown.
No, we still have white.
Oh shit. Oh
and
shit.
Black.
Oh shit.
Well,
we should probably finish that.
We already have it on the schedule. We will get to them.
Can you tell that at least one member of Black Tower Podcast has ADHD? At least one.
Yes.
It's not me.
Right.
I'm just dumb.
No.
I'm just spastic and dumb. But in like a lovable way.
Indeed. Yeah, no, we have a number
beard.
of different background breakdowns or just breakdowns in general, which makes sense. I mean, there's a lot to unpack in the Wheel of Time. And so definitely going over the different areas where we can break down nations and religions and different factions and people and places and things. You know, it definitely makes a lot of sense.
I mean, we had a whole bunch of notes for episodes coming up for like inspirations, like whenever we did like the possible religious inspirations for the Wheel of Time.
Mm-hmm.
But then this like guy with a mustache just kind of swooped in, took the notes, and said, "You know, you snooze, you lose." Like, that's definitely accurate and not a tall tale at all.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Don't sue us, Michael. So yeah, like Daniel was saying, we're gonna do another background breakdown, and this is one of those characters that, at face value, like when you first meet this character, you're just like, okay, it's another pompous asshole. And the character really develops, like very quickly, and just kind of like occupies the space in your mind. And just whenever you think like, okay, we've got the character figured out, we kind of know what's going on, we learn even more about this character. And this character, as we meet him first, is none other than I think we meet him first. We meet him first as
Lord
Luke.
Luke. Correct.
LUC.
Yes.
And there's not really a whole lot. Like, he never really says like where he's a lord from, what
Nope.
he's the lord of, other than bullshit and assholery. And he's basically shown up in the power vacuum that's been left in Amon's field, in the Two Rivers in general as well, after pretty much in the aftermath of the White Cloaks arriving, the Trollocs still running raids in the area, and Amon's field kind of becoming the de facto capital of the Two Rivers area. Becoming like this bastion of defense. Or am I ahead
That's
of
the
time?
second time that we meet him.
When's
The
first
very
time?
first time that we meet him is actually when Perrin runs into him right before he meets Gaul, because Lord Luke is actually the one who is leading who has led the group of people, or of like hunters of the Horn, who fight off a horde of Aiel and take one captive. And so Gaul is the Aiel that they have taken captive, and who's in a cage outside of the town, or the like bar or whatever, when Perrin and I want to say, is it what's his name? Is it Perrin and Loyal who are there? No, it's on the it's actually, well, it's Perrin and a number of people.
Well, Loyal is there because this is whenever
Yes.
they're doing the whole, like, whenever Fael is playing her game with.
No, it's before that. This is actually on their trip from this is them following Rand in the Dragon Reborn.
Okay, because I remember like,
Yeah.
like they're camping separately, and every time I see them camping separately, and Loyal's a part of it with Fael's group, I always
Yes.
think it's still part of the same like bullshitty thing. So
Yeah.
I was wrong on two fronts. Not only was that not the first time they meet this character, they also technically haven't met Lord Luke yet. He meets or runs into Slayer.
That is correct. Yes, he actually runs into Slayer in the World of Dreams, but he doesn't know anything about him. It's like when they talk about Slayer in the World of Dreams, it's like Perrin keeps catching like after images of Slayer for a while in the World of Dreams. And that is absolutely correct. In the Eye of the World is the first time that Slayer is mentioned, where Perrin, or no, it's it is the Great Hunt that he first starts seeing Slayer. The Eye of the World is actually when we get the first mention of Lord Luke, because Luke is Luke Mantir, and it's Tigraine's brother.
Yeah.
And that's the first time that we hear him mentioned, because they talk about Tigraine's family tree.
I mean, he is and he isn't. It's interesting.
Correct.
I think we'll get there.
Yeah.
Because so basically Perrin catches a glimpse of Slayer.
Yes.
Whenever he's in the Two Rivers in the Wolf Green. Like, he's not physically in the Two Rivers, but he is in the Wolf Green. And the guy flees, and Perrin chases after him for a while, and then
but Slayer is basically more knowledgeable, and so he keeps one step ahead of Perrin.
Yeah. And eventually, even though Hopper didn't answer whenever Perrin called earlier, Hopper does show up and is basically like, "Stop. Do you know who the fuck you're chasing? Like, that's Slayer. He's dangerous." And then it's right after that a woman appears. And she's like, "This is the Tower of Genji that you're at," because they stop by this big metallic tower where Slayer disappears. And she's like, "This place is dangerous. You like shouldn't be here." And basically, this is one of the instances where we see a hero of the horn. This case, by description, very clearly Brigitte with the golden hair and a thick braid, a flash of silver at her back. That's the silver bow. And she's like, this is another thing that tells us that wolf brothers are have happened with some relative frequency, because Brigitte is like, oh, you're a wolf brother. That's how you're fucking here, because it doesn't make sense otherwise.
Yeah.
Um, but sorry, I got
I
distracted
think
reading
I'm
my own stuff.
lying, by the way. I think I'm actually wrong. I'm really glad that I'm really sad that Morshadi isn't actually
Listening,
yeah.
at least not listening live. It's okay. He's probably somewhere else
Yeah,
making sure.
so I fucked up. I fucked up totally. The first time that he meets Lord Luke is 100% what you were talking about. You are absolutely correct. I apologize for correcting you because I just have my story totally mixed up.
I mean, it was a good
it is
correction, because we should talk about Slayer first, since he meets Slayer first. Kind of.
sure, but in the real world, I had it totally wrong. I very much apologize to anybody listening. And if you've been yelling at your screen for the last few minutes because I'm just super wrong, you're totally correct. The name of the Lord that Perrin runs into that actually captured Gaul is Lord Orban, not even remotely Lord Luke. He's just a shitty person and is not Slayer or Lord Luke. Totally different people. The first time that he meets Lord Luke is absolutely after he's done the whole thing with Fael. They've made it back to the Two Rivers, and they are Lord Luke gives like these weird stories of like what he's been doing in the Two Rivers and why he's there. But the first time that he meets him is Lord Luke and his entourage are coming into the Two Rivers from outside of the Two Rivers, basically like telling stories of the Trollocs that they've killed. And that's one of the reasons that I get the two mixed up, because the stories that Lord Luke tells about all the Trollocs that they've killed sounds a lot like the stories that Lord Orban tells about the Aiel they've killed. And that's why I always forget that the two aren't the same person, because they're both hunters for the horn, and they both start telling tales about like Trollocs and Aiel that they've killed, and they sound very similar. But I apologize. You are absolutely correct. Good. Lord Luke shows up in the Shadow Rising after Perrin has gone to the Two Rivers. It is before then that he meets Slayer in the World of Dreams. That is also correct. But Lord Luke doesn't show up physically in the real world until Shadow Rising in the Two Rivers, doing exactly what you said. So I apologize for that tangent.
No, you're fine. I mean, because we're still in the same book, right? Because the run-in with Slayer in the Wolf Dream, or Alaron Rion, if you didn't already know those were the same thing, is Shadow Rising, chapter 28.
That is correct. Yeah.
And I mean, it's a really good chapter. And this is one of the reasons why, even though it's not my favorite book, I definitely understand why the Shadow Rising is so many people's favorite book. Because you just get so much information about the world in this book, for sure. And this chapter is just a good example. I mean, we've met Slayer. We learned a ton more about what's going on in the Two Rivers. We learned a ton more about what it's like to be a wolf in the Wolf Dream. We meet Brigitte. We see that Brigitte will break rules. And then we learn that there even are rules, and that, oh wait, the Heroes of the Horn actually fucking live here. It's a fucking jam-packed chapter. Anyway, we got to focus in on old Slayer. So Slayer disappears into the Tower of Genji in Teleron Riyadh, which, given that even entering it itself seems to be a different dimension, could be as legitimate of a way of entering in the flesh as anywhere else. It would make sense to an extent. Now, what the fuck did he do there? Who the hell knows? It's Slayer.
I mean, but, so little is actually known about Slayer that, like, he's multiple people in one body. basically. And so on some level, how many actual people is he in that same body? He might just be a fucking Aelfin, like also running around in the same body.
But speaking of him, so talking about him in Tel'aran'rhiod, we learn that in Tel'aran'rhiod, your appearance is affected severely by how you view yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
And Slayer, Lord Luke, whatever, in Tel'aran'rhiod looks the same as he does in real life, with the exception of his real world blue eyes or waking world blue eyes appear black in Tel'aran'rhiod.
Yes.
And of course, Perrin comments that his scent smells inhuman, like a man mixed with a stone, which makes sense as we learn more about Lord Luke later on.
Yes.
But let's talk about a little bit of his history, because we do know some of where Lord Luke / Slayer came from. He is Valkyrie. At least in blood and flesh, he is Valkyrie.
Yes.
So
because
he
this is
was
actually sorry, this is just a really quick thing that I want to throw in. In Tel'aran'rhiod, he actually looks like Isam, except for the blue eyes. He doesn't look like Lord Luke outside of Tel'aran'rhiod, which is why when Perrin catches glimpses of him in Tel'aran'rhiod, he doesn't then immediately recognize him in the real world, because of course he meets Isam in Tel'aran'rhiod and then meets Lord Luke in the real world, and those two people look different, because in Tel'aran'rhiod he is Isam, and in the waking world he is Lord Luke. And so when Perrin runs into him outside of Tel'aran'rhiod, that's one of the reasons we don't know that this person is this person, because we're seeing Perrin's POVs and they look like two totally different people, even though they are one entity.
I'm gonna amend what I said earlier. I'm gonna say he is neither Valkyrie nor, well, he very well probably is Andorran and blood, but not the man tier bloodline that we're thinking of. So let's go ahead and, like, we've talked about it enough and everything. For those of you that don't know, the entity known as Slayer or Luke or Isam or whatever is actually a body with the merging of two different souls.
Correct.
He is the merging of the soul of Isam Mandragoran, obviously related to land, and that's where he gets his Valkyrianness from. And a mix of Lord Luke, or not Lord Luke, sorry, Luke Mantir, which would carry a Lord title.
Correct.
In reality,
yes, he would be,
because like Daniel said earlier,
Luke Mantir.
Yeah, because like Daniel said earlier, that is the brother of Tigraine. So these souls have been grabbed and merged together by the Dark One, by the Shadow, and put into this body known as Slayer, if we're gonna give a name to like the mix of the two souls.
Yep.
So there's more to that. So when Malkir was overrun by Trollocs, Isam Mandragoran was one of the few to escape. His mother, Breon Mandragoran, fled with him into the Blight. But they were attacked by Trollocs. Then Breon did not survive. Isam did, and grew up in a place known simply as the Town. The Town is a tiny urban center in the Blight. It's not far from the Valley of Thakandar, and is kind of at the foothill area of Shao Ghul. So it's very, very close to the border.
Well,
it's, if you've ever watched is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon, which is an anime, which is why the title's like kind of fucking
long and weird. Yeah.
There's one of the floors in the dungeon they get to, and it's considered a safe space, where there's like not monsters. I don't mean like, hey, nobody's gonna hurt your feelings here. There's no monsters. Or the monsters are all peaceful. And there's housing and hotels and stuff there, but it's all ramshackle stuff. It's all scrap boards and everything put together. Goods are stupid expensive because you got to go 18 floors back up to get anything else. So it's kind of like that. It is a town inhabited mainly by dark friends. Yeah, it's a really good anime. I recommend watching it. It's only a little bit of an answer.
I was gonna say, sorry. I've always actually viewed it as more of like a farm in some ways, like not a safe floor, but like if I were a dark friend, if I were, or not a dark friend actually, if I were a Murdral or someone who actually lived in Thakandar, some very evil entity, I would actually want a center in the Blight that seemed safe so that I could go and take souls from it whenever I needed to, and just like take some and leave enough that more people would come there and more, people would reproduce and things like that. But there are a number of uses for people and souls in Thakandar that I would probably use the town as like, oh yeah, it's a safe place. I only take, like a couple of people a week or whatever from, the town and use them to forge, Murdraw blades in Thakandar. And that means that I don't actually have to go all the way outside of the Blight to get souls. I feel like that would be brilliant for like a Murdraw to pretend that the town was actually safe.
Yeah. So your original impression is right. So let me clarify what I meant by it. The example I gave is in the anime, the town itself is constructed out of ramshackle parts. It's like building a town out of driftwood or something like that. The town in the Blight is not a safe haven at all. Not anything like the anime. It is very much full of the very creatures you were talking about. It's full of dark friends and the numerous people that that they have enslaved. In fact, this town has been there as a ramshackle town built with forced labor for 2,000 years or over 2,000 years. So it's older than a lot of like towns in the Westland.
Oh yeah.
So it's inhabited by dark friends. It's would seem like a very dangerous place for the laws of force, fear, and crime rule. Think your standard D&D, nothing's really good here town. With like poor construction.
Like basically Underdark, like in some ways.
Yeah, very much so. Now there is a hierarchy here, and the rules of Dark Friends do apply to that rule of hierarchy. And the town itself seems to follow some of the same rules that Shao Ghul does. For example, here channeling can just be restricted to only the people that Shaitan allows. So just because you can channel enter there doesn't mean you can actually channel. So we find out that Slayer, Isam, whatever, obviously grew up here. And this became his base camp. This is where Slayer bases all of his activities out of.
Yeah.
When he's in the waking world, at least.
Yeah.
And we kind of find out through Slayer that this town also contains a lot of the Sama Nasei, which are going to be those IL male channelers and individuals that are sent to spit in Sightblinder's eye and actually just wind up making it there and getting turned to the shadow for the most part. So in reality, like that action, yet another example of how just throwing away an entire half of channeler populace doesn't help anybody.
I mean, even worse than that. Like it's one of the best examples of not only are you throwing away a resource, an advantage, a thing that you have that, again, very dangerous. I'm not trying to suggest that male channelers are not dangerous, because that is abundantly clear throughout the books. But it's not only just throwing them away, it's actively handing them over to be an advantage to your enemy.
Yeah.
Again, no one knows that, but still, it is definitely true.
Yeah, because the thought is none of them come back because they all died. Is pretty much what the IL choose to believe or settle on or whatever. You would think you would actually go and investigate, maybe, I don't know, once, maybe twice. But then again, whoever went to investigate might have just gotten grabbed or killed as well.
I mean, yeah.
because there is no lack of talent and skill in the town.
Yeah.
But I think it winds up being told that it's reasonable to assume that all the Aes Sedai that have been turned along the millennia have probably been kept hidden in the town as well.
Yes.
And the Forsaken visit the town from time to time as needed, whatever that need is.
Yeah.
So anyway, with Slayer, so it's here that with him fighting to survive in the town, surrounded by the Sama Nasei and the Murdral, that it becomes abundantly clear why Slayer is as skilled in combat as he is. He literally grew up fighting and learning to fight, and not just fight, the random thugs in town and like Karian or Camelin or anywhere. He's fighting the best of the best. Like, what is it like? A single Murdral is said to be as strong as like 100 swordsmen or 100 foot soldiers or something like that. Like, forgot what the equivalency that they kind of explain Murdral with. Or is it a single IL warrior is worth 100 men or something like that? Why can I not remember it?
Sorry, say that one more time. I feel like I missed part of that because
No, you're fine. So kind of like the book gives us relative examples of like how to think about the strength of the IL and the Murdral. So like,
yeah.
like, having one Murdral is like having 7 skilled swordsmen or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the actual comparison was.
Oh yeah, no, I don't remember either.
Well, or maybe it is with Murdral. There's like even a Murdral gives a skilled blade master a challenge.
I mean, that is
we know they
definitely
do.
often
Unless
borne
they're
out.
weird.
So yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we see that all the time. Like, if we give even a skilled blade master a challenge, blade master shows up, immediately kills him like it's nothing. It's like, I don't think you got your power scaling right here.
Yeah, but I mean, again, it's also a question of what blade masters are you looking at? Because Lan is like one of the most, yeah, right. Or because like Lan is one of the most skilled blade masters in existence. Rand can also channel, so like you're talking about a couple of bad examples of even skilled blade masters. But yeah,
one thing I just realized about the description of Murdral is it's mentioned their fingernails are hard enough to scratch wood. Well, big whoop, so is fucking mine.
It reminds me of the scene in yeah, no, it reminds me of the scene in X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is not a great movie, but whatever. Where Sabretooth walks up to the chick's car and sticks his fingernails in and then just
I know what you're talking
across. About. Yeah. Well, and that was always really funny to me in a lot of ways because, of course, okay, so tangent for just a moment because we are the
Black Tower perfect because I need a refill.
We're having fun. Yeah, there you go. That's not how things work. The sharpness of something does matter. Absolutely. And the hardness of something does matter. Absolutely. And so again, if you have something that is like, all the way sharpened down to the atom, yes, you're going to be able to cut through things easier. And if you actually have a metal that is nigh on indestructible, like adamantium or something like that, it is easier to cut through something. But that doesn't actually mean that you can just cut through anything like butter. And so there's that scene in both X-Men 2 and in X-Men Origins Wolverine, where Wolverine just shoves his claws through pure concrete that's like a foot thick and then just cuts through it like it's nothing. And you're like, that's not how physics works. He would absolutely still have to cut, like, absolutely. It would be so hard to cut through concrete, even with your adamantium claws. Like, he doesn't even break a sweat. Like, it's cutting through butter in the movie. And you're like, that's not how that works. He would break a sweat cutting through that. He would absolutely not cut through it as easy as you just made it look. That's some bullshit. And it's the same thing with Sabretooth and his bone claws. Like, again, yeah, he might be able to get them in there and then drag them across, but like, he does it so easily, and the metal on the hood of the car just like bends back immediately, and you're like, again, not
Well, doesn't it all like curl
works.
up like
curl
up like ribbon at Christmas? Yeah, I know the scene you're talking about because it's because it's whenever freaking Logan gets he slams the tree in front of the pickup truck or the little SUV that Logan owns because she's
No.
hiding in the back.
Nope.
Well, he does it then too.
No.
Comes up
So
to the car, doesn't.
That's in a different movie. This is Liv Schreiber's Sabretooth is waiting in front of Logan's girlfriend's car, and so she stops the car, and he walks up along it, and then just like,
I know what
drags
you're
his
talking
heels,
about.
and then he abducts and kills her.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Because you did say Origins, didn't you?
Yeah, it's Origins, not Logan. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one I was thinking about is just the first X-Men movie. Whenever Rogue meets Logan.
Rogue. Yeah.
Anyway.
Tangent over.
Yeah. No. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Anyway, Murdrall, in comparison to the average fighter, not the land scope fighter, not the fighters that we wind up remembering the names of because they're actually special characters.
Yes.
Murdrall are stupid strong. You put them in front of like a squad to two squads to maybe even a platoon of foot soldiers with blades, and the Murdrall is just going to be like, light work. And even I think more capable than the Murdrall, the IEL.
Well, IEL
Murdrall have all kinds of benefits. Like they have all kinds of innate, like if you play D&D, I guess now
they have racial bonuses.
Species. Yeah, I was going to go with species since
Sure.
Absolutely every change that D&D is making right now is absolutely wonderful, and the OGL is definitely not flawed and terrible and destroying the industry. Fuckers.
It's a good thing that we already have a bunch of books out, so you don't have to worry about technically getting new books, because that's a little suspect right now. Hey, Hasbro, if you're listening,
license can open game
stop.
on these nuts.
Please stop.
You know what's so terrible? So another tangent here. Right after the last tangent.
That's fine.
So I'm not gonna say that I called this, but I definitely called it. Whenever Hasbro bought D&D Beyond, my first, like, some people were like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool, whatever. Now it's like full on with the regular ownership. I'm like, no, this is terrible. I was like, this means that all they have to do is, if it doesn't already exist, put in a disclaimer to say that all content you add here is this property. It becomes the sole property of Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast. It doesn't matter. I was like, and then they own it all. You don't own like your homebrew content anymore. And there's so much homebrew content on D&D Beyond that they could literally fire every creative like writer that they have for D&D and still release new books every 3 months for probably the next 50 years.
Oh yeah.
No problem. And it's already balanced.
Yep.
Like, it is absolutely ridiculous. I was like, this is going to be the worst thing ever. You don't let a big corporation buy something that people use for free.
Yeah.
Or at least can use for free. Like, oh, it's so bad. And now you got fucking the OGL 1.1 coming out, or leaked draft or whatever.
Well, we'll see. Because again, I mean, the nice thing is that the backlash on this has been pretty heavy. But at the same time, we all know that backlash does not equal results. It's only companies that actually care about backlash and what it'll do to them, or whether they actually are convinced that it will do anything to them, that backlash matters. Because If they
Oh.
just power through it, then the fans' opinions don't matter on some levels.
Yeah.
But
I mean, and they have it to do it. I mean, like Dungeons and Dragons is the best selling TTRPG ever.
correct.
Absolutely. There's not even a competition. Not even
Mhm.
close.
Pathfinder
I
is
think
the
like D&D
closest.
essentially made
Well,
the
Pathfinder is the
TTRPG scene.
closest second, and
Yeah.
it's way down front. Like
Yeah.
it's
But I mean,
hugely. There's a huge margin between those two.
yeah. So like historically, they've made a ton of money off of D&D, and a lot of what they were still making for D&D was like usage agreement
Yeah.
and the fees that you would have to pay. Like if you wanted to write an adventure and have it added to official D&D 5e Adventures League, you had to pay an exorbitant fee to get Wizards of the Coast to review it. If you've ever
Yes.
played more than 2 of them, you can tell they don't review shit. Because simple spell check would fix like 80% of the problems. It's so fucking bad. Like you're gonna charge people at the ass and not even do anything to make it better. Holy shit. But right now it's not even like one of their main, not even close to their main money makers.
No. Roll
Like
20
Magic
is
the Gathering
basically
is
their main moneymaker.
which one?
Because Roll 20 has to spend so much money paid to Hasbro to be able to host all of the different, D&D resources on their site, so that people can then go ahead and pay Roll 20 to use the D&D resource.
Well, I was just talking about Wizards of the Coast, which is obviously owned by
Yeah.
Hasbro. That D&D isn't even their biggest moneymaker.
Nope, Magic
That
is.
it's absolutely MTG, which
Yeah.
there's people leaving MTG in droves because whether you agree or not, there's people that are like, oh, these like abundant crossovers are getting a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
And there's people that are perfectly fine with it. Personally, I don't care. I actually
Yeah.
haven't picked up and played Magic in too long. My commander decks that I have built are just lonely. Anyway, someone who's not lonely, Slayer. Because he slays.
Mostly because he's never alone.
I mean, that's true. But so interesting fact, if you do go to the Slayer entry for the wat.fandom.com, which we're a big fan of wat.fandom.com, and you click on the Slayer page, like, okay, cool, here's this stuff on Slayer, and you scroll down and suddenly it becomes Luke Mantier. So it's a good thing that the very first thing they do in the whole article is tell you like it's actually a combo of 2 souls.
Yes.
Well,
and so you actually get both of the souls right off the bat, because as you said, you go to Slayer, it says Slayer, and then it gives you Isam, and then it gives you Luke. Because Slayer is basically just an amalgamation of both of those 2 souls in one body. Now, in the Waking world,
which one
looks
dies
like Luke
whenever Slayer goes for the Soul Stone? Like, is this a soul for a soul? Does it count as one soul because they've been merged together, like fusion style?
No, I think they lose Luke. I think Luke is actually the secondary one, because again, one of the that's a really good question though. I actually really like that, of like sort of which one is the dominant.
Let us know in the comments down below.
Yes, definitely do that. But I think even though it's a larger entry on wat.fandom.com, I honestly feel like Isam is the soul that Slayer thinks he is. In Teleran Riyadh, he is Isam. And so I think Slayer thinks that Isam is the dominant. And then of course it's just stuck in Lord Luke's body, which is why in the Waking world it looks like Luke. But I think that it's actually very telling that in Teleran Riyadh, where the way that you perceive yourself is the way you are, I think it's very telling that Isam is Slayer in Teleran Riyadh.
Oh my god, I didn't know this.
Which part?
Who's at fault for Luke even being in the Blight?
Guitarra.
I did not know this at all. Fucking Guitarra Moroso. Yeah, it's
for
the
those
same
of you who
Guitar
don't
that was
know
like, he has been
Guitarra-
reborn. Bleh.
Well, so again, this is Guitarra, who basically, so for those of you who don't know, Guitarra Moroso was the advisor in Andor when Tigraine Mantir and her brother, Luke Mantir, were the royal family. Tigraine was queen.
No, the queen was Mordrellin Mantir. I only know because I'm looking at the entry. Or did Tigraine change her name from Mordrellin to no?
No, I think that was their mom, right?
I believe it was the mom because they were definitely high seat of House Mantir.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
she
yeah,
reigned.
Okay.
Yeah. So her death without a direct heir because Tigraine and them fucked off is what triggered the Third Succession War, which allowed
That's correct.
the
Yeah, sorry.
the fucking
Because Tigraine was never
Morghese to take over.
indeed, because Tigraine was never actually queen. That's absolutely correct. She was daughter heir under Mordrellin, and her brother was first prince of the sword. That
More like Mordrellin, you know, good handiwork. All right, carpenter.
Adam.
She built a kingdom. Get your mind off
But
each
yeah,
other.
so Mordrellin is queen. Guitarra Moroso is the advisor to the queen, Mordrellin Mantir.
Yeah.
Mordrellin marries her daughter Tigraine off to Damodred.
Oh, Darden.
What?
Darden.
No. That's her husband in the Blight, or not the Blight, the Waste.
Oh, you're right.
But it's Jesus, what is his name? What is Galad's dad's name? I don't remember his first name. Tarangale. So she marries her daughter Tigraine off to Tarangale Damodred. And she Tigraine gets information from Guitarra Moroso that she needs to go abandon her family, leave Andor entirely, and go into the Waste and become a maiden of the Spear, which she then does. She meets Janduin.
This is after she gave birth to Luke. Because Luke is still remains an Andor. Yeah, he does.
No, Luke is her brother, not her son. Galad is her son.
You're right. You're right.
She does have Galad, and then she fucks off to the Waste. Correct.
You're right.
So Luke and Tigraine, it's all good, dude. There's so many.
It's been a long fucking day. That's gonna be my excuse.
So Mordrellin is up here. She's the mom. Guitarra Moroso is her advisor. Then down here as the kids, you have Tigraine and Luke. And Guitarra Moroso, the advisor to both of their mom, who is queen, tells Tigraine Mantir to fuck off to the Waste and become a maiden, and Luke to fuck off to the Blight to seek his glory, I think partially to make sure that he doesn't go after Tigraine. So Tigraine goes to the Waste to go ahead and meet Janduin and get pregnant with Rand, who is going to be the Dragon Reborn many years later. Luke goes off to the Blight to seek his glory, and in the process runs into Isam Mandragoran and this weird, mysterious, we don't actually get that much information about it, soul splicing happens. Because Isam doesn't exist anymore. I mean, he does, because his soul is in Luke. But of course, again, in the waking world, in the real world, Luke
apparently he can choose. I was sitting there, I was looking for something else, and I saw he can appear in both forms in the world of flesh.
Jesus, what?
This dude has like innate mask of mirrors, but it's just two different forms.
Jesus. Okay.
Which is also something insane. I didn't know. I feel like we've probably seen him physically in both different iterations, or each different iteration. But apparently that's one of his many abilities. Because ultimately, like I get Guitarra sending Tigraine to the waste. Like I feel like at least some degree of that was pushing Tigraine there because of the prophecy for the birth of the dragon, right? But
Yeah.
I don't, and we might get to it as we keep going through. I don't see anything that would rationalize other than keeping him from going after Tigraine and therefore interrupting her destiny to give birth to the Dragon Reborn. That could very well be it. The Katara was like, we're sacrificing Luke's ass because why not? His name's Luke. Wasn't really that great of a character in Star Wars. I'm so glad Josh is in here right now. He's gonna hear that back and be like, that motherfucker.
Josh just screamed out in pain from the middle of a cruise ship. So
he's like Yoda during Order 66. Oh,
right.
Oh,
I felt a great disturbance in the Force.
Yeah.
So interestingly, there's actually, so I just read ahead, which is great. I love watch.fandom.com. If you have any questions about characters or events in the Wheel of Time, go check that out. Also, go check out the Great Blight. I have not read their entry on Lord Luke / Slayer / Esam, but I bet it's pretty good. But this right here says that as Luke, he is spotted by Egwene, Elaine, and Nynaeve while spying on them in Teleran Riyadh. And yet, as Esam, he kills the Black Aja sisters Amiko and Joya Bair, who were being held in the Stone of Tyr. And so again, I feel like that's part of the reason that we don't recognize who he is, because he's, as you said, and as the article says, Slayer has the ability to be each one, either Esam or Luke, in the flesh, in the waking world, whenever he wants to be. And so again, he's doing this Mask of Mirrors thing so that he cannot be recognized by people that he's running into. So knowing that he's unlikely to be recognized as Esam, he goes into the Stone of Tyr and kills Black Sisters. But then in the Two Rivers, he appears to Perrin as Lord Luke. So again, he's doing this like dual soul, dual flesh thing. So in that case,
well,
I
apparently
mean, again,
it is.
my original thing of like Esam's soul goes into Luke's body, that's not even true. It really is not just a meshing of souls. It is a splicing of both soul and body.
Well, it's like a cohabitation, because another part of his abilities is that it seems that both Luke and Esam's personalities survived intact.
Correct.
And that it turns out that Luke either was or was made just as evil as Esam grew up to be.
Sure.
And that it seems like the personalities get along with each other very well. I mean, this is like Moon Knight with inherently collaborative personalities, and there only being two.
Yeah. Honestly,
so that's all
I feel like that actually adds a little bit more to Guitar Moroso. Because if Luke was actually already showing signs of being a really big piece of shit, it doesn't just help her prophecy for Tigraine being the mother of the Dragon Reborn and getting Luke out of the way to not go after Tigraine. It also means that she's not putting Tigraine in danger by having Luke follow her when he is already torturing animals or, you know, doing all of the other things that are signs of being pretty messed up. Because as it says, you are completely correct that it seems that both Luke and Esam's personalities have survived intact, and that Luke is just as evil as Esam. In fact, they seem to get along with each other.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Let's see. What's some of this other shit that he does? Because we already talked about he has the ability to enter the Tower of Genji for some reason. Correct. We don't exactly know what that's all about. I'd love to know more about that for sure. So he first meets Perrin chases him because Slayer just killed a wolf in the Wolf Dream. And of course, the wolves are in the Wolf Dream are the ones that gave him the name Slayer, because your boy would see a wolf and it was on site every time.
Yep.
And that was his thing. He just ran around Teleron Riyadh killing the ghost of wolves.
Yeah.
Or the soul of wolves.
Also, just throwing out there, just before we get into that part, because this is part of the previous thing, I think it's actually really sad. I didn't catch this in the actual reread, but it is said that Janduin, Tigraine's waste husband, Tigraine's Aiel husband, who is the father of Rand.
Her waste husband thing.
It's her husband from the
away.
waste.
I know what you mean, but
I know. But yeah, her
funny.
Aiel husband, who is the father of Rand, could not forgive himself after she was killed during the Aiel Wars. And that he went up into the Blight and was killed by someone who looked like Tigraine. And so the prevailing theory there is that it was Luke as Slayer, having already been sort of intermingled with Goran, that killed family side in these books. It's very sad.
Lag for a minute there.
It did technically say it was me, or at least mine warned me that my connection was unstable. So maybe my phone's just not doing a great job right now.
Who knows? But I could definitely see like Isam and Luke kind of talking as they're walking around, and Isam being like, "So, buddy, kind of want to tell me what that was about? Why you just wanted to kill an Aiel?" And Luke is just like,
just murk a goddamn
Aiel. He fucked my mom, bro.
Sister.
He fucked my sister. Look, I can only think of Tigraine as mom, not sister.
Isam, have you ever wanted to kill your brother-in-law? Because that's what I just goddamn did.
So anyway, Uncle Luke here. Uncle Luke.
There we
which
go.
Might actually help me remember that he's not the fucking.
Well, that's another thing that what.fandom.com says, which makes a lot of sense, because the character of Slayer and the character of Rand are actually pretty removed from each other. Again, Slayer is almost exclusively a Perrin storyline, which is totally fine, and it actually makes Perrin's storyline kind of cool, because he's the only one who can stop Slayer in a lot of ways. Maybe not the only one, because again, he's in Teleran Riyadh, and there are a couple of other people who are pretty masterful in Teleran Riyadh, but Perrin
just the wise ones sitting there being masters of the world of dreams, watching this go on and be like, not our problem.
Well, and Egwene, for example, is also pretty masterful in Teleran.
But I could see Egwene just being like, no. But just the wise ones sitting there being like watching this game of cat and mouse back and forth, and they're like, why doesn't Perrin just will his heart to stop? Like, I feel like that's definitely something you could do if you were skilled enough in the World of Dreams, but it's probably just as broken as like power word kill. So,
well, it also is interesting because, again, given how much Slayer seems to have mastery over Teleran Riyadh, I don't know if that would work on him. Because again,
I wonder where he learned it.
A weak Aes Sedai, not that hard. Shielding a strong, knowledgeable Aes Sedai, real hard. So again, like, it's almost like trying to shield an Aes Sedai who knows what they're doing and already has hold of the source.
So like all this brings up a question of like the nature of the merging of Luke and Isam. I mean, if
of course
Luke is the one that ran into Isam,
sure,
then it had to happen in or around the town.
Probably.
So there's gonna and since they're both evil, like I wonder if Luke really wasn't that evil. He was just like bitter because he got sent away or was encouraged to leave his court side. Especially if he learns about like the fate of his mother and his sister. See, I got it right that time. Look at that. I'm learning. And it just gives him that vulnerability emotionally and mentally that allows the seeds of Shao to actually take hold. Because I mean, I wouldn't think, unless he was inherently kind of like shitty from birth, I don't
Sure.
see what would make somebody that's used to the royal palace of Camelin show up to the town and be like, yeah, yeah, this is better. Like, I
Well,
don't.
it is also telling in some ways. There are two things that I would say about that I'm noticing right away from sort of the just general background of the question. Luke has, or Slayer at this point, the after merging, has basically free reign to go ahead and do what he wants. And he doesn't return to the palace, seemingly. And I think that that's kind of telling of, if he's used to the palace and he is actually more Luke than Isam, or if Luke was not really that evil, but he just gets influenced by Isam or by the Blight or by the town, whatever you want to call it, I feel like he goes back to Andor, back to Camelin, and is pretty unhappy with this situation there. And Morghese doesn't make it through. You know, Isam, Slayer just uses Isam's hunter abilities to take out the new royal family in Camelin and put himself and his family back in. But he does seem to stay in the Blight. Like, he seems to, as you said earlier, make his headquarters there. He basically sets out from being in the town. And so I don't know whether it's the Blight does something to him, or whether he was already this way, or whether it just needs a foothold, or whether Isam is just that bad. Any of these are possibilities. And any combination of these is deadly. But it does seem like Luke gets lost. I mean, like, he's still Luke. I'm not saying that the entirety of Luke gets lost, but any royalness and desire to go back to Camelin and take up his rightful place as the first Prince of the Sword or anything like that seems to get lost in or around the merging, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, so we might get some insight from Birgitta, because Birgitta talks about Slayer being a new occurrence, but perhaps an old evil.
Yes.
So there seems to be like that kind of vague sense of familiarity. Like, I've seen this somewhere before, I think, but I can't quite remember what. But either way, this is a whole new version of whatever that was. But we know at some point there has to be an influence or an involvement of the shadow with Slayer, some control, because we do see that he winds up being under the control of Morden, because Morden eventually grants Grendel the service of the One with Two Souls, in order to kill Perrin.
Yes.
And this very nearly succeeds. Which, by the way, I know we didn't talk about it, and it would be a miss to not, since this is very much a Perrin storyline. Perrin thinks Luke is odd from the start. He's just like, there's something about you that's kind of off and smells familiar, but I can't quite fix it. Like, he picks up, like, this is the one time that people pick up on the subtle details that most fantasy just has them not notice because it would be bad for the plot. But Perrin's like, this guy just walked up to me and recognized me and knew my name, but we've never met. Like, that's fucking weird. And there's several things that kind of happen like that. And the big tell is Perrin and Slayer fight. Perrin comes out on top-ish. I mean, he does come out the less or not injured party. Yes. I think he's just less injured. But notices that the same way that he injured Slayer, Luke is walking around injured, and he's like, you fucker. Yeah. And he knows just enough about the World of Dreams at this point to sit there and be like, okay, there's some fucky wucky happening. Even though that difference in appearance, we now know is not purely because of the World of Dreams. But by the time Perrin and Slayer really face off again, after Slayer is now under the direction of Grendel,
Yes.
Slayer pulls up with a dream spike, and this is I believe the first time we really see the effectiveness and usability of a dream spike. Um, and we notice this because there's Ashaman at this point traveling with Perrin and his force from the Two Rivers, and the
Yes.
I think they have. Did they have Saldaeans with them at this point?
Yes, they do.
And some Myenians, because what's her face?
Mhm. Ireland.
Big titties. That one, yeah. Is traveling
Jesus
along with him. I really
Christ.
blanked on Bear Lane. And that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think Bear Lane. Just fucking massive honking bazongas.
Yeah, Mia Khalifa.
Or Califia. Jesus Christ. Oh, that poor woman. That poor woman. Anyway,
That was our
because
fan
like
cast for Barrelane, right?
I mean, it's definitely mine. I could see it. You know, if it wasn't for all the anyway.
Yeah, we'll not go into that.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Ashram start talking about how like I don't know, it don't work. Like
Yeah.
I have gateway dysfunction. I don't know what's going on. And eventually, well, Perrin goes through quite a lot here because it's like this is roughly the same time that Slayer attacks and kills the wolf Morning Light, which Perrin
Mhm.
sees and experiences and throws him into a rage. And Perrin just gets swept aside. Like Slayer's like, "Huh," and just bitch slaps him away. And Perrin barely survives.
But it teaches him, which again
Oh, yeah.
is the thing, is that this is one of those moments where I love the trope when it comes right down to it, but it's a good trope and it's one that makes sense and matters, which is the idea that the good guys learn and the bad guys ego. Because in the world of dreams, Perrin gets spanked right now. He gets, I mean, it's partially because he's in a rage, but it's also just because Slayer knows more than he does. And he just bats Perrin aside. But again, it's one of those moments where Slayer is the best person in the room. And conventional wisdom says that if you're the best person in the room, go to another room and learn new things. Perrin is not the best person in the room, and he's learning things from Slayer. When he gets batted aside, he immediately goes, there's things I didn't know, and I can make myself a lot better in Teleran Riyadh by learning those things that I just got schooled on. And when he comes back into Teleran Riyadh to confront Slayer a second time, he does not make the same mistakes. He absolutely learns from the experience and changes tactics by ways.
Well, it's still hard because he comes back in, and of course the dream spike's still there. I think by this time Perrin is like seen enough at them sit there and be like, never seen that before. That showed up about the same time. That's probably the problem. So he goes back in, and we find out that the dream spike in Teleron Riyadh doesn't just like in the world, it prevents channeling and quick traveling or using gateways in and out of the area when it's set up in Teleron Riyadh.
Yes.
In Teleron Riyadh, it prevents movement out of the dome. So basically, what Slayer has done is he set it up where there's a high concentration of wolf spirits in the wolf dream, and he's just killing them. He's just running around killing the wolves because he still has free movement because he, as the kind of owner of the dream spike, can move in and out of the dome at will.
Yes.
Perrin shows up with his own kind of pack, including Sparks, Whisperer, and Hopper. Sparks gets injured, and spoiler, not for the last time. Whisperer gets killed, and Hopper jumps on Slayer to give Perrin a chance to escape with Sparks. Later on, after they've been given a chance to kind of heal up or whatever, Perrin comes back, confronts Slayer again. They begin to fight again. The wolves are now using tactics. They're flanking Slayer. Slayer
this
kills.
is a great scene. I love this return to Teleran Riyadh.
Slayer kills Oak Dancer, injures Sparks again. So Sparks, kudos for surviving, but that's still bad luck, bro.
Well, he will. I think he actually goes back into Teleran Riyadh injured. Like he's,
so. But he still gets injured
mean,
again. Like,
yeah. But he's also working with a handicap. So like Sparks,
I mean,
as
you have
said,
my respect.
kudos. But also like, bro, sit this one out. Like,
yeah. But this is when we start to see really how much of a force of will, literally will, that Perrin has become in Teleran Riyadh, because he does his best Green Lantern impersonation.
Yes, I love it.
Without the CGI suit, it just starts nullifying everything that Slayer's doing with willpower, and Slayer's like,
oh shit,
that's not good. Fucks off.
Yeah.
And then Perrin finally finds the Dream Spike and takes off towards Tar Valon with it. Slayer's chasing him. They two begin fighting over each other, and Hopper trying to help Perrin, as he has from the start, before the Wolf Dream and definitely in the Wolf Dream, winds up being wounded. Perrin goes into an absolute other fit of rage and knocks Slayer into a nightmare. Like, he literally banished him to the Shadow Realm for a minute. Stabs him in the stomach and then destroys the Dream Spike by throwing it into lava. And of course, comes back, and we have this one of the saddest moments of the series, where Perrin comes back to Hopper, who we find out has now actually he was mortally wounded.
Yes.
And Hopper's like Hopper's like pretty chill about it. He's just like, it is what it is, young bull. Like,
well, it's interesting because one of the things that I noticed on a reread, maybe my like third or fourth, definitely not the first time I read it, and definitely not even the first time I reread this series, but I really feel like when it comes right down to it, the Wolves and the Aiel both have a very sort of blasé view about death. Because especially in the waking world, wolves don't care about death at all. Because then they go to the wolf dream and they basically get spun back out, or whatever actually happens to them. Well, yeah, no,
we can fly in the wolf dream.
Right, exactly. And so they're in the wolf dream, and that actually seems like almost a promotion in some ways, to go from the waking world to the wolf dream, because you have lots of abilities that you did not have in the waking world and whatnot as a wolf, as just a soul. But even when they die in the wolf dream, like, Perrin is livid. The first time he sees that wolves are dying in the wolf dream and Hopper sort of tells him what's going on, Hopper even at that point seems kind of blasé about it. Because again, I feel like Hopper and the rest of the wolves have this very Aiel, like, not really like nihilistic, but like also not nearly as like humans view life so sacred. The wolves just kind of view death as part of life. Like, Hopper just comes to him and he's like, yeah, wolves are dying. I'm not gonna say it's a good thing, certainly, but like, wolves die in the wolf dream. And Perrin's like, we need to stop this. And like, Hopper's like, I mean, it'd be nice.
And Hopper's just like, you're here too strong, young bull.
Right. Well, and Hopper is like, I mean, we don't like Slayer and the fact that he's here. I agree with that. But also, like, don't do anything about this. Like, this is
Slayer,
not your
you're kind
job.
of fucking up my afterlife, bro. Could you not?
But like, at the same time, he's definitely like, Perrin, this isn't your job. Like, you're here too strong. You have things to learn. Go home. We'll deal with this.
Yeah.
Death is a part of life. And then at the end, like, Hopper gets mortally wounded by Slayer. And he's basically standing there just being like, young bull, I died twice. You'll die. We all die. It is what it is. Do what you can while you're alive. And you're just like, Jesus Christ, Wolf. Like,
well, one of the things I find interesting too about this whole scene is when Hopper is talking to Perrin, and of course we know it's not like verbal talking. We
Of course.
we know that. Out of all the wolves that Perrin has met, both in the World of Dreams and in the waking world, Hopper, who at this point basically is the Gandalf of wolves, directs him to one wolf in particular, Boundless. And I'm sure you remember who Boundless was when we first met Boundless.
Yeah.
This was known. This was the human that was too far gone, that was lost. It was a hopeless case that that Perrin released so that he could roam the wilds because he was fully over into the wolf side of being a wolf brother.
Yep.
And like now it's literally sitting here, like Boundless is like tapped as the number 2 to mentor Perrin in the remainder of his time in the Wolf Green. Which that's got to be really cool. I mean,
I love that part of the series.
Like that's really cool. That is a redemption arc that we didn't know we needed, but we needed. So that's really
honestly
awesome.
Again, I don't know how much of it was actually in Robert Jordan's notes, how much of it Brandon Sanderson put together, how many callbacks were actually, planned versus fan service, but like in the positive way, not the negative way. But again, just major kudos to whoever put that together. A lot of it to Brandon Sanderson because he's the one who wrote it in the book, period. But again, depending on how much of it was notes versus Brandon versus whatever, probably also major kudos to Robert Jordan as well. Because this is one of those moments where it really feels like the story that happened, that particular storyline with that wolf brother was a nice addition at the time that it happened in the story for Perrin's arc. But the fact that it gets brought back around all the way at the end of the story is just, as you said, sort of like icing on the cake, just the redemption story that we didn't know we needed, like all of that good stuff. And this is,
I mean, who doesn't love seeing a storyline that you didn't even know was a storyline when it was introduced, like wrapped up at the end?
yes,
and I know that
it's
was
one
a lot
of the
of
things that I love when it happens in D&D, when it happens in movies, when it happens in books. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I know, like Brandon and Maria and Harriet and Alan and from Team Jordan, and obviously Brandon from Dragonsteel / Team Jordan, I've talked about is that Powers of Midnight and A Memory of Light were very important in wrapping up storylines. And it's a big reason why instead of having one final book, there had to be 3 final books.
Yep.
The final book was, split into 3.
It was just too much to put into a single book.
But speaking of final, let's move into the kind of final hurrah for Slayer. So after being stabbed in the stomach by Perrin, putting him at an obvious disadvantage for combat, Slayer, who is in the form of Isam, as he predominantly is in the waking world, is approached by a woman who he's like, oh, this is just an unrevealed member of the Chosen. And it's not. I mean, it kind of is, but it really isn't. It's Sindane, which is the reborn Lanfear.
Correct.
It's Lanfear minus the pretty and added the ugly stick. That was her punishment.
That was Hessalam's punishment. Sindane is actually okay, but yeah, Hessalam is the ugly Grendel. Sindane's not specifically ugly, but she's not as pretty as Lanfear is. So, like, you're not wrong. It's just not. Hessalam is like specifically old tongue for ugly.
You're right. That's definitely what I was thinking of.
Yes.
Sindane just literally translates from the old tongue into common as last chance.
Yep. That is correct.
Which, given the recent revelation revealing about Lanfears, all the more fitting. But anyway, at this point, she comes in and looks at Slayer and is like, "Look, the the main good guy, like we know he just got stabbed in the stomach by like one of his friends. But we're gonna need you to go kill the main good guy. Like just direct, efficient, straight assassin mission. Like you can have, and it gave him the use of two Sama no Se, which of course are those IO male channelers that have been turned to the shadow, and several guards. I guess just fucking miscellaneous guards, whoever the hell they are. Probably just dark friends, if necessary. And Slayer's like, cool, I got this. I've been shooting people in the back my whole fucking life. And shows up to shoot Rand in the back with an arrow while he's fighting Moradin in Shao. And Perrin just kind of shows up and just Kung Fu Panda blink, swats the arrow away.
Oh, yeah.
At which point, Slayer swiftly goes, oh shit, and runs away to the Sama no Se. And Perrin, who has Gaul with him, are able to follow them in and engage in battle, I believe, in the waking world.
That is
no, yeah. Is it?
No, they're actually
it's in Teleron Rion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons that Nynaeve, Moraine, and Rand don't actually notice.
Yeah. You're right, because it's later that Slayer.
Yeah, because in Shale Ghul, just at the bore and everything like that, the border between reality and all of these other dimensions effectively is just so strained that Slayer can be there. And if he, like, Rand and Nynaeve and Moraine are in Teleran Riyadh, sort of, because it's just Shale Ghul. And so Slayer can get to them, even though normally he wouldn't be able to from Teleran Riyadh. But since Shale Ghul is just such a weird place, that's why he can show up in Teleran Riyadh, try to kill Rand, and then Perrin can show up in Teleran Riyadh, deflect the bolt, and no one knows that this happened except for the people in Teleran.
Didn't Rand, like in one of Rand's POVs, when we go back to his kind of POV as he's fighting Morden, like, isn't there a reference to them like hearing a noise or him feeling like that Perrin was, or something like that? Some reference to it.
That is correct.
Because the border is so strained.
Yes, because the border is so strained.
So anyway,
yes.
As
so
Perrin
they're
and
still
Gaul
in
chase
Teleran
after,
Riyadh now. When they go back to the Saman-Se, and Gaul engages them in combat. Perrin is also engaging them in combat, technically, but he's basically making a beeline for Slayer.
Who at this point has realized that Perrin is there in the flesh, which being in Teleran Riyadh in the flesh is a massive deal. It takes a great deal of skill and power, and is also, you know, a really big no-no for most people. Yeah. So they fight each other, and Perrin's like, I'm going to hit you in the face with my hammer. And Slayer's like, I'm going to shift away because I'm ready for this. But we finally see a reversal of the cat and mouse game where Slayer had always been the hunter and Perrin the prey. Perrin is now very much the hunter and Slayer is the hunted. And now at this point, Perrin has figured out how to just direct shift from reality to a fucking dream dimension.
Yep.
Like, bruh. Like, 1 second I'm in reality, the next second, just bloop, I'm not.
Well, and this is one of the moments where I absolutely love the Mahalanir storyline. Because one of the things that I've always seen is in Norse legend, Mjolnir is actually the tool where Thor holds all his power effectively. Now, granted, again, the storyline in Thor Ragnarok where he realizes that it's just him and he doesn't need Mjolnir, totally legit. That's absolutely Norse mythology. Thor is just dope regardless of his hammer. Mjolnir is just a conduit with which he focuses that power.
Like the Aes Sedai in their hand gestures. Don't really need them. They just facilitate the power.
Exactly. But again, in the Wheel of Time, it's one of those things where Perrin defines himself very akin to Thor by the weapon slash tool slash whatever you want to call it that he is carrying. And so now that he has thrown away his axe,
I just put
made-
Stormbreaker together. I literally just put that together. I think. Oh God.
Oh, buddy.
Sorry. Continue.
It's all good. But yeah, so now that he has cast aside the axe and forged Mahalanir, it definitely feels like he has leveled up on so many different tiers. Because it feels like having the hammer gives Perrin the confidence that he needs to do things that are really in his Taviran nature, rather than necessarily being so against them. Because again,
it is the ultimate safety blanket.
Yes, because from the beginning he has been, I can't really use this axe. I can't really be a wolf brother. I can't really do this. I can't really do that. I can't fully commit to all of these things that I'm being, like, advantages that I'm being given, because I'm just feeling like I'm going to lose myself in them. And I feel like when he helps forge Mahalanir with the other Ashaman, it is a shedding of a lot of that fear. It's a shedding of a lot of that, like, resistance to a lot of the things that he has been being pushed towards by being Taviran and having all of these advantages and being, again, as frustrating as he is, a dope character in the storyline. And this is actually particularly poignant based on the secret or the reveal that Brandon Sanderson made the other day. I've actually gone ahead and heard a lot of backlash about this particular thing that Brandon said, which, for those of you who don't know, one of Perrin's last... Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because I mean, I had a thought. So Perrin's, what has been Perrin's biggest struggle, other than the fight with violence or non-violence, throughout the entire series? Well, it's been grounding himself in reality.
Yeah.
You know, that this is reality of the world. You know, is this something I really have to do? Is this a decision I really have to make? You know, how do I balance my wolfness with my human self? And then whenever it comes to the wolf dream, you know, this constant now, like, almost memeable thing from Hopper: you're here too strongly, young wolf.
Yeah.
And it's Hopper reminding him, you are real. You still exist in the real world. You need to ground yourself in reality. And at the point where he has Mahalanir, I don't know why I just said the name twice. It's a good name, I guess.
It's a great name.
Yeah. He which is definitely the name, like, abundantly inspired by Hopper's death. I think, doesn't it mean like soaring wolf or something like that? He who soars.
Yes.
Close. So I was pretty close. And it's so, like, it is very much in part an homage to Hopper, who taught him how to survive the wolf dream. At the point that Perrin makes Mahalanir, and I believe one of the core functions of Mahalanir is it serves as an anchor point in a way for him to physically, mentally, like a fidget toy that helps you keep focus. For him, it grounds him to reality. And I think ultimately by the end of the series, we see a Perrin that doesn't need Mahalanir to ground himself to reality. And I think that's displayed in his ability. Like literally, like, who else, now the Slayer's gone, who else other than Rand can just shift into an alternate dimension with pure willpower, which only serves to further my way old point that Teleron Riyadh is just a training ground for how people are actually supposed to influence the world around them in the waking world. I will stand by it, that if you're good enough in Teleron Riyadh, you can just do it in the waking world. That Perrin has access to the same power that Rand does now.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I like that headcanon. And I'm
But anyway,
I'm down
like
with it.
he grounds himself. That's
Yes.
what Mjolnir does. That is a physical kind of fidget toy.
Yes.
Which is like the worst description for Mjolnir ever. To help him ground to reality.
I don't know if
but
it
yes,
is actually the worst. I think it might not be as
like comfort blanket meets fidget toy.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if it sort of gives the gravitas to Mjolnir, but it's definitely not a bad example. Again, if anybody out there has ADHD or any other things, like fidget toys are huge. They actually
I
really
fidget all the
ground
time.
you.
Like it's literally my beard
Right,
coming. This is what
exactly.
I do.
Yeah.
Like halfway through the episode, I'm like just
Yeah.
opening and closing it because it's
And
made of
so
wood
again,
and it kind of squeaks.
as much as it almost feels like, especially given the advent of fidget spinners being like a TikTok thing and gross and like do whatever, like again, the reason that they were made is still very legit, and it functions well for the people who actually need it. But
They
anyway,
probably banned them from like every school from the kids that actually could benefit. Anyway,
exactly.
you were saying about the revelation of Perrin and another character.
Yes. So recently, as many of you I'm sure heard, Brandon Sanderson came out and revealed something from the books. If you don't like it, it's not part of your headcanon. That's fine.
This was the big 10-year secret, the one that
Yes,
couldn't be
the 10-year
revealed until the
secret.
10-year anniversary of Memory of Light release.
Exactly. So Brandon Sanderson revealed that, in fact, sort of somewhat against what most people felt was happening in Teleran Riyadh at the end of A Memory of Light, where Perrin actually snaps Lanfear or Sindane's neck in Teleran Riyadh. That Lanfear was actually able to influence Perrin via compulsion and make him only think that he had killed her, and that she is actually alive at the end of the story rather than having been killed by Perrin. And I want to just throw out there again, if you think this is BS, whether you believe that as bullshit or Brandon Sanderson, that's fine. You don't need to see this in the story. It is not something that is gospel. It is absolutely something that Brandon Sanderson sort of intended to write in the story, according to him, but there is evidence to say that that's not true. If you like this reveal, dope. It's your new headcanon. It can now be that like you're still scared of Sindane in some ways, of like what she could do in the future. All of this is totally fine. All of this is great. I actually have a little bit of a bone to pick with fans about this, because I heard a lot of things on Reddit and a lot of things on Twitter and whatnot about the problem with this reveal being that it undoes something that Perrin accomplished at the end of the books. And again, I'm not saying that it's completely wrong. It does kind of undo something that he did, but I want to mention it in this episode because I know this is not a Perrin episode, but this is a Slayer episode. And if the last thing that Perrin does is defeat Slayer, if the last thing in the books that Perrin does is to defeat Isam and Luke Mantier, that's already good enough. This is a character that has been the bane of Teleran Riyadh users and people in the waking world since the very beginning of the book series. This is a person who is extremely powerful. This is a person who uses Teleran Riyadh like their personal playground. And the fact that Perrin is able to come from the Eye of the World into the Shadow Reborn or the Shadow Rising. Jesus, not the Shadow Reborn. The Shadow Rising.
I was very confused for a second.
To a memory of light and take out his biggest rival, one of the people who he has learned the most from and also bested. I'm not saying that taking Lanfear from him isn't a removal of an accomplishment. I'm not saying that. I get that it is. But Slayer to me is enough. It is the culmination of so many books of foundation and events. And sort of my final thoughts on this is I think that the character of Slayer is super interesting and super awesome in a lot of ways, partially because it gives more credence to Padan Fain. It is a foil to Perrin the entire time, very akin to the way that Padan Fain is a foil to Matt early on, and a foil to Rand sort of later. But it's one of the coolest things that, again, you have a number of examples in the story of people being fused with other people, whether that be soul, whether that be body, whether that be both, all of this different stuff. And you have this character of Padan Fain who is this conglomeration of a bunch of stuff. You have this character of Slayer that is a conglomeration of a number of things. And then, of course, at the end of the story, you have this character of, or these two characters of Rand and Moradin who switch their bodies and abilities. Sorry about that, guys. This is my fire alarm.
Okay, I was like, I'm not just crazy hearing like some dog whistle or something in the back.
No, it's happening. But again, I
God,
love
it's happening.
All right. I love the consistency of the story. Again, whether that be Brandon Sanderson, whether that be Robert Jordan, or some combination of the two, or all of Team Jordan or whatever. I love the consistency of really putting that into the story and not just having this one-off of Padan Fain, or having this one-off of Lord Luke, or having this one-off of, Rand and Moradin doing this body soul switch. There's so much foundation in the story from early on to really suggest that this is a thing that happens. This is a thing where magic is mysterious, where the rules of Teleran Riyadh, the rules of channeling, the rules of the Dark One, the rules of all of this are explained to a certain extent, but they're all still very mysterious. You can have plenty of mystery in the story without needing Lanfear dying at the end, without needing to know every law of channeling, without needing, all of these things set in stone and having all your questions answered. There is so much in the world of the Wheel of Time that is up to your interpretation. There's so much in the world of Time that is up to the decisions that you make in your own canon. And Lord Luke is one of those through lines that from an early stage, he is an enigma wrapped in a puzzle, wrapped in a mystery. And you never fully get answers as to Fain and Slayer and a bunch of different things. So even though you get closure with it, Slayer dies by the end of the
irony
story.
of saying dies as the poster died.
My house is apparently a mess right now. But the fact that, again, you have that closure of Slayer dying, but also does he? Like, again, even on what.fandom.com, it says he takes a blow to the head from Perrin's hammer, Mahalanir. Slayer was killed while in the form of Isam, but it can be presumed that because of their link, Luke dies too. Can it? I mean, like, again, there's so much mystery here that, again, if you decide to take that presumably Lord Luke dies as well, Awesome. That's great. That's awesome for you. I'm 100% for it. I actually also have that headcanon in this particular case. I do. But at the same time, there is so much evidence to say who fucking knows. And that's one of the things that I love about this series. That's one of the things that I love about the character of Slayer. That's one of the things that I love about all of this mystery that is just baked into the world, into the characters, and into magic. And so Slayer is a great character. I absolutely love that we did an episode on Slayer. I'm sad that Josh didn't get to do it with us because I'm sure he would have had a lot to say, but there you go. Slayer's dope. I'm glad he's dead because he's a mess, but like at the same time, he's a great character and I love that he was added into the story. There you go. Long last thoughts.
No, you're fine. Although I know I put it in our super secret, top secret chat where we plot things away from the fandom and keep all of our secrets because we're assholes. But I definitely want to we need to work in an episode to talk about the Memory of Light secret about the whole Landfair thing.
Agreed.
I love it because and this is gonna be a very quick point. Yes, Morshade, we are very lame. No one is ever here. That is our shtick. That we keep talking despite the fact that everybody keeps saying stop listening, stop talking. Anyway, I love the thing about Landfair because to me it fleshes out part of her story, or it rounds out part of her arc. This caught in a bad place, trying to do a good thing, forced to the shadow, and now she comes around into a place where she can go back to having agency and having her own decision and potentially redeem herself.
Who knows?
Which I would like to hope is
the mystery.
Yeah. But also like we finally get to see like she's this fabled master of Teleron Riyadh, and everybody's always like, well, why? And I think the only real example we get is here at the end with what she does with Perrin. And I think that she is a master of Teleron Riyadh, not because she can do all these really cool tricks, which I'm sure she can, but she doesn't advertise like Mo Gideon does, like Slayer does, like Egwene does, like the wise ones do. She just is there, and it's I am such a sucker for the subtlety of making changes very subtly and over time so that people think that they're perceiving a reality that is wholly different than what's happening. I love it. I'm also a Naruto nerd, and I think that's how genjutsu or illusions work and work best. So there's that. But anyway, to the actual topic that you missed the entire discussion on, we could have used you like 6 times more, Shadi, because you would have been calling us out all over the place. But fact checker Mahil was checked out for the night. You know, something about like having a life to live or something like that. I guess something lame. I really do love the character of Slayer. Slayer very much comes off to me as an amalgamation of characters that wind up being evil for evil's sake. There's never really actually a motive for Slayer. There's like what does he gain? What does Isam or Luke gain from killing Perrin? Control over Amon's field, like taking over the 2 rivers? Like that's a very, as much as I love Amon's field, nothing against Amon's field, that's a very subpar goal for a dark.
That's so
taking
small
over
time. Yeah.
It's like saying you want to pick like a random like hillbilly town in southern Alabama and take it over. Like, why? You could take like Mobile or something, at least something that people have heard about. But no, you want to take care of like Bob's ass scratchery or some shit. I don't know why that's an example. But he's evil for honestly like the sake of being evil. He hunts wolves for the sake of killing wolves, and presumably we can add motives to it where it's like there's this directive, you know, there's an extermination order signed by the Shadows Department of Natural Resources, like wolves are a menace, exterminate on sight, open season, all season. But he's evil just for the sake of being evil, and it seems like his attention actually only really turns on Perrin. One, once he realizes Perrin is a wolf brother, and 2, because the one place that we've seen him outside of the town in the Blight, now he's challenging Luke's authority. And I could see Luke feeling a certain type of way about that in Andor. Like Luke is gonna walk back in with that bitch. I'm literally royalty swagger. And it doesn't mean shit here. It doesn't mean shit there. Again, I'm a sucker for the evil for the sake of being evil. Like for the same reason I like horror movies up until the point where they explain why everything's happening. They're terrifying. Like Insidious, the first Insidious, terrifying. And then they explain why. And then it's a shit movie after then. And everyone after it is a shit movie after that. Don't do that. Like that's what made the first Paranormal Activity so great. Terrifying. You don't know why. Just fucking stop explaining horror movies and people actually shit their pants.
Sure. That's what thrillers are for. There should be horror movies, there should be thrillers, there should be psychological thrillers.
Yeah. I like it. But no, I like the story. I like Slayer as a character. I think it's I'll say I like him as a character. It's a very well written character. I think it's a character that's very well used. I like that Slayer forces Perrin to fight the hard fights. Like Slayer shows up when Perrin has to really make a really hard decision between violence and non-violence. When he has to really make a hard choice between am I wolf or am I human? And ultimately Slayer's challenges force Perrin to grow to a height that I'm sure Perrin didn't even see possible, and that Hopper wound up being very proud of. So I like it. I like the evil characters that are written like this, that where they don't have an obvious goal for themselves. Their function and their goals serve a very tangible purpose in the plot. So I'm going to say that Slayer's a plot character that's really great, and that's it of my very long final thoughts.
Well, I just want to throw in there, I love what you said, and one of the things that I brought up is, or one of the things that I want to bring up based on what you said, sorry, is I agree completely with the sort of, if you leave evil characters motivations vague enough, like obviously you don't want to leave it with absolutely no form or function at all, but if you leave it mysterious enough, the awesome thing is the reader then gets to put what they want as their motivation into the story. And I actually really love that. But yeah,
two bros chilling 5 feet apart in the same body. I don't know.
But yeah, I always am definitely, as you said, sort of a fan of the give me motivation. I don't want to just come up with it all myself, but also leave it open enough that I can make it interesting for me. Because my motivation for an evil character is not going to be the same as Andrew's. Andrew's isn't going to be the same as Josh's. Josh's isn't going to be the same as Morshadi's. And so if you leave it vague enough, then we can all put in a motivation that we like versus just explaining all of the motivation and telling us exactly what we're supposed to think and making it kind of annoying.
But speaking of things to tell you exactly what you should think, we're going to tell you that you should think JordanCon and WatCon are awesome. You should definitely come to those events. JordanCon being, is it the last weekend of April or second to last weekend of April?
I'm going to sound awful here and tell you
second to last weekend.
Second to last. Excellent.
Yeah, JordanCon 21st through the 23rd of April 2023. And if you can't make it to JordanCon, you have another chance in July to come to WatCon, which is going to be the 14th through the 16th of July. My birthday is on the 15th, so come help me celebrate my birthday in Columbus, Ohio. Of course, jordancon.org for more information on JordanCon and to get your tickets there. And if it's still available, to book a hotel room with their rate. WatCon.com to book or to buy your memberships for for WatCon. And I'm definitely not telling you should because I'm one of the directors, but I definitely am also doing that.
Well, I just
But
want to.
also
Can
a
we
good
high
place to
five
get your-
or cheers officially? Because I don't think we actually officially cheersed last week when you told me that you were a lifetime member now.
Oh yeah, cheers, lifetime member. Tink.
Indeed.
'Cause that's the sound glasses make.
Mhm.
But yeah, get your membership. Trust me, the VIP stuff is worth it.
It
Abundantly.
absolutely is. It
You get to sit
absolutely
there
is.
in person, and while you're trying to eat dinner, everybody stops and cries because Kate Reading and Michael Kramer, Kate Redding and Michael Kramer read the "Does My Husband Ride Alone" passage.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
I've
Hurt my
seen
soul.
drier eyes at a funeral. That was fucking nuts.
It's so nuts.
Anyway, if you can make it out, we'd love to see you there. Make sure you come and say
100%.
hi. We'll be hanging out. We'll be having some drinks here and there. We'll be going to different panels and all that kind of stuff, and hanging out. So please, if you see us, don't be ashamed, or not ashamed. Why would you be ashamed?
Yeah.
Don't be worried. Don't be
hesitant.
nervous. Come up and
Yes.
talk to us. We're just nerdy morons that talk to microphones.
Correct.
And we don't even do it for a living. So there's that. Josh will be back with us soon. I think he won't be back for the next episode.
But he should be back in 2 weeks.
Yeah, but he'll be back
Yeah.
for the episode after that, all the way back from exploring America's, not America's taint, but the world's taint. I only say that
Yes,
because it's
the
as far
world's
south almost
taint.
as you can go. The world's taint, big frozen
Indeed.
taint. He's looking at penguins.
Indeed.
So also take and check out our TikTok, Black Tower Pod on TikTok. We try to post the highlights and the funnies from episodes on there. And a certain somebody named the Almond Khan Mahil now lives very, very close to a very extensive rum bar.
Correct.
And has been uploading some TikToks on there with his journey. And I wrestle with my own mind, but I'll probably start trying to do some TikToks talking about different whiskeys
Yes.
as I
Thank
try
you.
them. But since I have to buy the bottles and can't just go and get samples, those will be more
That's true.
sparing than the others.
That is true.
Because right now I can tell you about two different whiskeys right now.
Well, hey,
But
that is 2 more than most people could tell you about. So there you go.
I'm pretty sure people have heard a lot about Balvenie 14 year and Lagavulin 16 year. But anyway, that's enough of, I think, the end of episode promos. Again, the Almond
Yes.
Khan, the Soravan Mahale will be joining us again in about 2 weeks. I have been your Bajan Mahale, Andrew.
I have been your Amin Khan Mahale, Daniel, and I just want to throw out one more promo. I know that it's super far away, but please do keep in mind this early, because that's how life works. The Gathering Madness in October of this year should be in Utah, Salt Lake City, Ogden area. So keep that in mind. We will be prepping for that at some point, but keep that in mind, because again, travel and whatnot is a big deal. It absolutely is. So there you go. And also, I do want to throw out again, if you are in either the West Coast area near-ish Seattle, if you are in the mountain region near-ish Salt Lake City, or in the East Coast area near Havelock, North Carolina, please shoot us a line. We would absolutely love to, grab a drink with some people who listen to the show on the podcast or on YouTube or whatever, in person. It's one of the things that we actually love. It's one of the reasons that we love Jordan Con and WattCon and whatnot, because we get to meet fans of the Wheel of Time in general, and also in some ways fans of the Black Tower podcast. So if you are one of the many people who lives near adjacent one of those places, please shoot us a line. We'd love to go ahead and see you. We'd love to go ahead and know where you are. Not in a weird, like, we want to know where you are way, but like,
Where
being
are
able
you?
to get together, right?
Where is she? Where is she?
Where are the other
Where's
trucks going?
Rachel?
But yeah, we'd love to go ahead and be able to hang out and things like that. So again,
Not just because it strokes our egos and we feel fancy and
yes,
famous.
100%.
Which
But
we definitely don't
because
feel like fancy, but it does kind of make us feel a little famous. Well, I don't
it
like
makes
going
us
to
feel
JordanCon and meeting people,
seen.
and they're just like, "Oh yeah, I know who you are." Like, come on, like there is a
It's
little bit
nice
of like
feeling. It is.
me, little old me. What?
Yes, agreed.
But
But
let us know. We just love hanging out with fans of the Wheel of Time period. So if you happen to live
Exactly.
close, and we can get something together and hang out in a public place.
Yes,
Put that caveat out there. Well, I mean, with discretion to each individual's desires and
correct.
comfortability. But public place is definitely my preference, and I would
Indeed.
definitely encourage.
Yes.
You're not just gonna like come over to the house and hang out one night to play video games like that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe eventually.
Once
Who the
we
hell
get
knows?
to, I was gonna say once we get to know you, maybe, but like probably first time public place, we're all good, excellent. But again, after having thrown that out there, if you are one of those people, shoot us a line. We would love to hear from you. If not, that's also entirely acceptable too. I know that there are a handful of listeners from Canada and other places that don't actually have the chance to go ahead and see us on any kind of regular basis. We also love you. You are not lost.
You're one of our 3 listeners from South Korea, and you just happen to find yourself in like Ogden, Utah. Hit up Josh. I don't know.
Exactly. But yeah, again, from all of us here at the Black Tower Podcast, we would love to meet you. We would love to see you. You guys are amazing, and you make all of what we do possible. Thank you again from the bottom of our hearts. We like you, we love you, and you're fantastic human beings. But again, I have been your Amin Hail Daniel, and from all of us here at the Black Tower Podcast, we hope that you're having an amazing morning, afternoon, whatever it is at the moment. And in case we don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
You've been having so much trouble just fitting in the tower.